Hi everyone, I'm super excited to host Daniel Boba. I've been wanting to host him for a very long time and I'm super happy that I got a chance today. He's currently working as AC software developer at Perkins and Will, and during my time at Perkins and Will, we got a chance to interact and know each other. And as I said in one of the past interviews, like Team SHL is amazing and incredible. Like they're doing a lot of cutting edge products, and today we'll get to know a day in the life of Daniel Boba, how he's up to, what are the things he do. So thanks a lot for being on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Nice. So Daniel, for people who don't know about you, right from college to till date, what would be the three highlights of your career?
Yes, so I studied architecture. So my background is in completely in architecture. It was in Poland at Salesian University of Technology. What was nice is that we were really pushed to travel a little bit, and so I participated in a couple of exchange programs, and one of them was in Italy. So I studied at the University of Pisa, and this was kind of that was a place where I got into computational design because we had this 1 week workshop. We started with the stuff that you would usually follow on YouTube, which is like doing some funky shapes, testing Voronoi, doing some parametric columns, stuff like that. And I remember that on this workshop, I just completely fell in love with it. So that was like first step, with getting to know algorithms and seeing how all those things work. Yeah, so that I would say everything started there. So kind of important moment. Um, then I started to work as an architect. It was a mandatory internship that we had to make. It was in Germany, half a year. And then I realized that there is actually a bunch of things that we can automate, make smoother, um, and just make it nicer to work with. AEC software is not very user friendly sometimes, so I think it was a good motivation for me also to get to know front end a little bit more, just to build apps that are better to use for us as architects. And then the second highlight, I would say, was when I started to my internship at Schmidt Hammer Lassen. So it was during my master degree. I moved to Copenhagen, and at the time, it was digital practice team run by Ryan Hughes. Um, it was super cool. We started with Grasshopper. Of course, a bunch of scripts, but at one point we realized that, okay, maybe we want to make it more stable. Maybe we want to scale it. Maybe we want to um, push it the way that more people will be able to use it and they will interact in an easy manner with that. So it's how we started with also developing our own nodes in Grasshopper, and then making full-blown plugins for Revit and Rhino. And yes, so that was it. And then the next step was actually web development. So I would say like third highlight, probably my career is not too long, so the third highlight would be probably when I started diving deep into web development, getting to know 3JS, and yeah, then a bunch of doors has opened.
Yeah, like it's quite interesting from grasshopper computational design grasshopper to like no code way, then custom node, then custom plugin, and then full stack software. Like it, you have evolved like step by step in that journey. And what were like the times where you felt it challenging to learn and adopt to this new skill? Like, and even from the example for full stack developer, there's so many JavaScript libraries, frameworks, and you're like, where should I start? And were the times you got stuck, and if you can share any story.
Yes, I think the most difficult part is like to get to know the concepts, because once you know concepts from computer science, then they are like always repeatable and you can see them in many places. So I think that was the most challenging part when we had to create some plugins um, or make something more performant and you didn't know how to start with that, right? So then you have to like dive deep, pretty low level, figure out what are those algorithms doing, maybe like what approach you should use, and so on. So I think that was the most challenging. Also, I remember like starting to use design patterns in software. That was game changing as well. And suddenly, like all those pieces of your code were making sense because you just put them in a proper order. But you somehow had to learn how to do it. So that was the tough part.
And just for the clarity, can you clarify what is design pattern? It's in software perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, so design patterns are patterns that exist in object-oriented programming mainly. And those are just like principles that are repetitive and many software developers are using them. I think originally it comes from 80s, maybe 90s, and there were a group called Gang of Four, I believe, and they wrote a book about design patterns, and since then people are just using them because they are solving problems that occur quite often in software development in OOP. So yeah.
Amazing. And have been following your journey in I can't even count the number of hackathons you have won, and like you, Victor, and team have like a great strike in the hackathons you participate and the amazing projects you created. So maybe this is a good time we can walk through some of the projects and you can share a bit about it.
Yeah, sure, let's do it.
Perfect. You can see your screen. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that's the first slide. So actually I wanted to start with talking a little bit about our team in Copenhagen. So we are 4 people at the moment. Um, Me, software developer. We have Ellen. She's a UX designer and UI designer at the same time. We have Zuza, that is digital. Oh, she's Beam manager, so she knows everything about Beam. And Victor, that is lead of our team and also software developer. So we work very closely together. And since the beginning, since I'm in SHL, we are really focused on finding problems. We even from time to time run some workshops in the office or even in other offices that fell under the umbrella of Perkins and Will, just to find problems, identify them, and try to solve them with our products. So this is our approach, and I think it's also visible in projects that I will show later on, that we are hacking over weekends on hackathons. So this is not a hack. This is our main product that we are currently working on. It's called AriaSync. It consists of 3 parts. So we have Rabbit plugin, we have Rhino plugin, and we will also have web application. So essentially, it's a business intelligence tool that runs inside your software. It's slightly different in Rhino and Revit. So maybe I will start with Rhino. So in Rhino, you don't have like the problem was that user didn't have any feedback about, for example, how much area they have or how much area per department they have. We are designing in very early phases. So they would use Grasshopper scripts. They would run it to check like, okay, so the total area is that many square meters or square feet. So what we wanted to do is to build this plugin that will give them feedback instantly. And so this is how AriaSync in Rhino has started. So we are like keep tracking what users are designing and just giving them this feedback all the time. And they can also add some metadata to every shape, meaning that you can say that your BREP, your geometry is in department of office, for example, and then you will have total count for offices, and so on and so forth. So there's like other functionalities there as well. But yeah, on Revit part, it's pretty much the same, but in Revit, it's slightly different because you already know your rooms, you already know your areas, so it's there. We just like count it and summarize it for you. Um, Also, what is important part of it is we are creating some graphics that are later used for deliverables, but I will show it maybe on the next slide. Um, but the core functionality of both plugins is actually that you can send it to the cloud. So we are saving all this data in our backend, and then you can query this data on the web application. So this is the way, also in other places. So the backend part, we call it Mantle, and it's like a whole platform where you can send the data. So AreaSync is essentially a provider of data that flows to Mantle, and then we can consume this data in other tier. That's an example Power BI template that fetches data from Mantle, so data that was sent using AreaSync. And you can share those with your clients. You can share it with your manager. You can check it on your phone. You can check it from anywhere, basically. So it's unlocking a bunch of potential. Yes, so that's about AreaSync. And then I have some hackathon projects, but I don't know, maybe you have some questions.
Yeah, like this is an amazing product because I know the challenges it has in terms of defining the right schema, database schema for backend so that it's compatible across all interfaces and the front end. Also, the interface in like for web, it's a different framework, and then for Rhino Revit, you have a different constraint to make that UI UX. So, can you walk us through what were some of the challenges and the decisions you had to make?
Yeah, I think we have challenges all the time, but data schema, as you mentioned, was a big one. And we are like checking how other software companies are doing it. So we are checking how data schema at Speckle look like, how IFC looks like. And so we are trying to find like a perfect solution, but it doesn't exist, unfortunately. So at one point, we just started very simple. And as we go, we are adding more stuff. So what I showed you before is just rooms and areas, but what we are currently working on is also sending assets to the cloud. So it will be sending families and instances of families from Revit to the cloud. Um, so we have a bunch of challenges about, because it's starting to be a bunch of data, so you have to manage it in a smart way. So how do we do a proper versioning? So we are also experimenting with Speckle as a backend, so we can be smart about it and hash things that already exist and check if they already exist. If not, we are not sending them. So just don't repeat yourself, otherwise your database just got bloated. So we are trying to be very careful about this. Also, I think one challenge from a front-end perspective was that you have to manage components. You want to probably reuse them and how you do it. And, so you have very similar components in both Revit and Rhino. But I think we are kind of happy right now with a solution that is like having Tailwind and some components prepared in Tailwind. They just work in both places, and you can just copy paste them, yeah, and do some versioning on top of that. Yes.
I see. And are the plugins within Revit Rhino an embedded web viewer, or you had to like also trying to understand how do you make a CI/CD pipeline when you have multiple interfaces?
That's a very good question. So what we use with WebView 2, which is a library from Microsoft that runs inside .NET environment. And it's basically, it's using Edge's engine under the hood, I believe. So you have a web browser embedded inside your application. It's very similar to how Electron works, or it's very similar to how your VS Code works. It's also a web application. So we use WebView 2 to communicate with the, we are basically hosting our web application inside WebView, and we communicate using C# with back and forth with Revit or Rhino. So we have those bridges which are like bi-directional binding basically. So you can click a button on your web application and then it's gonna send some data to your C# native code that has access to Revit API or to Rhino Common in that case.
Oh, interesting. So I'm just also trying, like, for example, when you have converter of Vue to .NET, like for example, if I want to drag and drop, uh, like there's a family in Revit which I want to drag and drop, for example, in your plugin. Uh, would that be possible? Like, what are the limitations when you have like those converter? Because there are some DOM events which maybe you could bind, but there are there any limitations with those kind of viewers?
Um, Sometimes you have to write a lot of boilerplate,
Okay.
especially to do like proper bindings between things. Because when you are entirely in C# environment, for example, then you just use WPF, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and you call your code directly. Um, so that can be challenging a little bit. And when you are communicate between those two pieces, it's basically like communicating with APIs. So you have to stringify things, right? So you have to make a JSON out of your object if you send something from C# to the web, for example.
Mm.
So sometimes that can be limiting, or we had some small issues with that, but yeah, but I would say it's rather minor things.
I see.
What is also very cool about is that since it's a web application, so the plugin that you've seen here on the right side, the Revit one,
Mm-hmm.
it runs on the web as well. It just in some places, so it's the same application, exactly the same application that runs on the web. In some places, we just have a flag saying, "Are you in Revit?" And if it's inside Revit, then the functionality is available, for example.
I see. So, for example, if I click on, let's say, a room in Revit, uh, like I'm just trying to understand, are there two backends, one for the application specific and one for mental? Because uh, let's say I click on the web of room of, like, area of like living room, does that get highlighted in Revit or Rhino, and how that clicked event is passed, because then it has to listen to Revit API, which.
Yes. So on example of Rhino, it's you can select some geometries. So Rhino Common will emit an event, right?
Hmm.
So we can listen to this event, and that's what we do. And once the event is emitted, we are sending update to the front end. So we use this WebView 2 framework to send update to our web application. And then we manage state there, right?
Hmm.
So we can add a new object or delete. So in a way, it's like you said, so we have two separate databases, but a mantle works only when you click on the sync button. So the sync
Hmm.
button is sending everything to the cloud. So when you're inside your software, you have this real-time feedback as you work. But once you click on the sync button, it's gonna make a snapshot of your state, and this is available on the cloud.
I think that explains the whole workflow. And any limitations on, like, how big is the file is, like, if there's a lot of geometry, how do you manage latency and stuff?
Yes, as you can imagine, in Revit, sometimes like 5 GB files. So sometimes it takes a while to sync things, but currently we are working on optimizing this by hashing things and making it a bit smarter. Because with rooms and areas, it's quite easy. It's not a bunch of data that you have to. Even if you have 5,000 rooms, it's fine. You can manage that without much latency. But the problem starts when you want to send some geometry. That's why now we are working on the assets part, sending families, and that's a bit more challenging because you have geometry that initially was like few hundred megabytes to be sent, so you just can't like send it all the time, right? So at the moment we are testing solutions around GLTF and GLBs,
Mm.
where we basically hash solids inside Revit. So you like find every unique geometry, then you send only those unique geometries, and then assets will be assembled on the web um, from those unique geometries. So it's not like you have to send geometry for every instance. You just send unique geometries and then you like assemble those assets. But yeah, kind of difficult to explain without any diagrams. But maybe next time I will have a presentation about that.
No, no, it's I know it's a complex product engineering, but like I just wanted to ask those questions so like people get a picture how is the information flowing and like it's how are the various parts connected. Uh, and you are reconstructing it in the web using like 3JS view or
Yes. So the diagram on the right, for example, it's 3JS. Yes. So we have a viewer in 3JS, and yes, and
I
also
see.
like in Power BI, we use actually proving grounds at the moment. But I think eventually it will be 3JS as well.
I see. And while deciding the schema in the mental like the 5 GB of Revit data when it's stored in mental and when the same 3D is being reconstructed in 3JS, like I'm assuming there's a trade-off between the size and the number of parameters related to that model being stored because 5 GB on 3JS like would not uh, be like super latency efficient in the browser because
Right. For rooms and areas, we are sending GeoJSON, so it's only 2D. So then you don't have many problems with that. For assets, we'll probably stream GLTFs, so it's like very compatible with the web. 3JS has like a proper loader for it and everything. Um, and yeah, I think there is a bunch of like Speckle Viewer is amazing, for example. So it might be that we're gonna leverage what they have also to visualize everything quickly, and they are like chunking geometries, and there is many optimizations there. So
yeah,
maybe we're gonna use this solution.
like it's a great product with a lot of interesting engineering problems here solving like so I think we can go to the next project.
Yes. So that was Speckles Hackathon a couple of months ago, and we built this little product called Arc, and it's a little bit like CDE platform where you can upload your files, and your files will get converted to Speckle format. So the problem that we have is that, as you mentioned before, we have some massive files, and then you have like 5 GB Revit file that you have to open, and it takes like 40 minutes to open it in Revit, right? So sometimes you just don't want to do it. So what if we can just take this Revit file, drop it in web application, and it will get converted in the background? So that was a problem that we wanted to solve. And we are able to do it using APS Design Automation API for Revit part, and for Rhino part, we are using Rhino Compute. So yeah, so you can see this is a model living that was converted living in Speckle. And you don't lose any data, which is also great because it's exactly as using connectors in native software. Yeah, so there are some benefits here. So you can publish things automatically, right? Because now it's just like saving a file, sending a file. So you can maybe every day at midnight you want to make a snapshot of your geometry of your beam model, and you just send it, and it will get automatically converted to Speckle. Then there is another thing, which is you can't access drawings without opening files. So if, let's say that you have a client, your client don't have Revit, so what you do, you can export PDFs by opening Revit and waiting again like 40 minutes and then another 30 for exporting. Or you can drop this file and send them link to the 3D model that lives in Speckle. And now Speckle has this automate thing, so even you can produce some drawings right out of the box. Yes, and there is another issue with like versioning. So if you have older models in Revit, then sometimes it's Revit 2018. You want to open it, you don't have 2018. Oh, it's actually, it works that way. It doesn't work the other way around.
Yeah.
So yes, and yeah, this is like super high level architecture. So it's just a Next application that has a Postgres database and AWS S3 storage attached to it. And then we are just like calling APS and Rhino Compute to convert those things, and we are saving this in Speckle. So yeah.
So Daniel, I'm curious. Like Speckle has its own converter. Like for example, using Speckle Pi, you could convert that file into Speckle schema. W- Was there any particular reason you chose to use those Revit Rhino specific viewer to convert to Speckle?
Viewer, what do you mean by viewer?
Sorry, Revit Rhino, like Rhino Compute API or Revit API. So the basic, if I am understanding, you upload native files of 3dm.rvt.
Yes,
You're using these APIs uh, to convert into Speckle schema, right?
exactly. Yes.
So just because those are proprietary formats, you can't directly convert to Speckle schema
Yes.
with Speckle Python. Okay.
So we use pretty much the same code that Speckle has in their connectors. It's just we do it headlessly, right? So you don't
Okay.
have to open Revit, you don't have to open Rhino. You can just put it in the cloud and execute it there, and it will get converted for you.
That's super interesting. I see. What
And
was the
so
most? Sorry.
this project is actually open source. So if you, I don't have a link here, but if you check for Speckle Arc, I think gonna pop up somewhere. And yeah, we would be nice also to add some extra converters for Blender, for example, or other software. And it would be perfect if everything can go run headlessly.
That's amazing. And what is the most challenging part for this development?
Um, I think learning those API over a weekend, because it was a hackathon, right? So you just have to go quick and dirty. So at one point we just didn't know if it's gonna work, right? So either we flash everything and and we'll end up with nothing, or it's gonna work. And luckily it worked. So
I see. And I'm still a bit confused. So headlessly using Rhino and Revit, they have the API, but Speckle plugins are installed in the desktop versions. So how did you got access to what the plugin is doing? Maybe like you use the open source plugin code.
yes, so Speckle has they have like every connector has a Nugget package. So it's like npm for
Ah,
C sharp basically, right? So package management. So Speckle has this package for every connector. I mean, I'm not sure if every connector, but for APS and Rhino Compute they have it. So we just use this package, and we are able to use their namespaces and library just by installing it, right? So that's why you can have like your code in C sharp running on the cloud, and you don't need anything else. You just have to install their packages.
God. And You mentioned S3 and Postgres. So are you storing the native file format in S3 and Speckle schema uh, in Postgres? Or
Yeah, so Speckle was storing the whole geometry and all information about the model itself, and Postgres was storing information about like execution time and the job if it was
okay.
successful and so on, right? So all the stuff that is visible. Actually, I should go to this slide. So all the stuff that is visible here. So on the left, you can see a mockup. So the Postgres is hosting all the information about the run of a workflow, and also we had to store the files somewhere. So that's why I have S3 bucket here as well. And on the right side is actually running product. Victor worked on it a bit more and pushed it further, so it might look a bit different. So yeah, I totally recommend you check it out.
This is pretty cool.
And
Nice.
here on the right, you can see this is a Speckle viewer, right? So
Mm.
the model got converted. You can see it on the web.
So Speckle Viewer has components, or it's an iframe embedded.
This is an iframe. The viewer here is an iframe, but they also have npm package. So if you want to like deep dive inside the viewer, you can install their package and then modify some pieces. Alex from Speckle made an amazing job on it to make it very modular. So you can, it's a little bit similar to the viewer that Autodesk had for the Forge viewer.
Mm-hmm.
So you can build your own plugins on top of it. So for example, at one point I built a plugin that is like importing GLTF format to the Speckle viewer. So you
Oh,
can really
really?
like customize it. Yes, yes.
I see. And if you were to build like IFC Speckle Viewer, the way you do it is a component which uploads an IFC file you send back to Speckle
So that's
schema and
interesting
then
actually.
import with the
Uh,
iframe.
It's actually interesting one because some time ago we went to Zurich for another hackathon. I don't have it in the presentation, unfortunately, but there were a couple of people from Speckle and also Antonio from IFCJS, and apparently Speckle is using IFCJS to convert IFCs to Speckle format.
Mm,
So I think since Speckle is open source, I think if you deep dive in their code, you can find some lines where you can basically like send IFC and it will get converted to Speckle. I think we even tried that, but there were some little issues with versions of IFC or something like that. But that's possible, and I think it's one of the easiest to do actually.
got it. And if you had more time, what was there anything you would have developed more?
I think it would be nice to make it like a full-blown CDE platform where you have
Mm.
like versions of your files. So instead of calling them final, you have something similar to GitHub. Um, I think like generally like showing files as graphs, it's something that would be amazing. The file
Interesting.
versions. Um, yes, and also like adding more connectors would be very beneficial as well for sure.
And do you know how people like in 3D world do like version comparison? Like if each geometry is hashed and if I move just one wall, will it create new hash? And then how would you like one is okay, geometric coordinates changing, there's new version. But how do you also communicate back the semantic way where okay, there's a new version, but also like is- the wall has changed or whether the material has changed. Like just tinkering out loud. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. I think it would be nice to know exactly how Unity does it and Unreal Engine. Uh, they can optimize it probably in a very smooth way. So that's definitely something to explore.
Yeah. Because
But I guess,
no,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
continue. No, I was just saying like why, like, I was just thinking backwards. Why would people want to have version control? Because at some point they made some changes which affected the long term result. They want to trace back semantically, okay, what caused that. And how do you get that metadata info with each versioning you do?
Yes, I think versioning can be very nice for like if you want to have a timeline of your project, for example, right? So
Hmm.
you want to know how it changes over time, and are you going into a right direction or a wrong one? Are you getting closer to your goals or not? So
Mm.
we had a conversation about having a timeline in Aria Sync as well. So every time you sync, we can like show some points in time um, that we kind of give you feedback if you are in the correct place or not. So yeah.
And when you say timeline, is it the timeline of saving? Like
Yes,
save
syncing
any
in that
version?
case.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So for example, if I just move one wall and I save and it adds one data point, and I can move four walls and save, and I say in the timeline perspective, it would be same one dot, or the
Yes.
intensity you would change. Okay. Okay.
Yes. As we speak, actually, now I thought about Speckle having kind of a graph structure, right? Because you have models, you have branches, you have projects, so you can really organize it as a graph as well. So
Mm.
maybe Arc's future would be about selecting to like which branch exactly you want to commit, and then you have like multiple models with multiple versions, and you can also compare them, right? That would be something.
Yeah, you could also make a configurator. Let's say that you want to show three different material options, then okay, just
Oh
select
yeah,
the version.
exactly.
Yeah. All right. We can move to the next one.
Yes, so this one is from New York. That's actually where we met last time. It was AEC Tech Symposium and then Hackathon. So we work on this project called Boring, and it's basically about test classification. So we call it Boring Machine. It was the name at the time. At the moment, we call it Chato. But basically what's going on there is we of course use WebView 2 inside Revit because we love it. So it's again web application running inside Revit. Um, but what we wanted to solve is like the naming problem. Maybe I can go to this slide first actually. So imagine that you have 3,000 rooms inside your Revit file, and each of those it's called something, but you want to somehow classify them. You want to know what is kitchen and what is not, right? So how do you go about it? Maybe someone misspelled the name. So here on the left, you can see on the left mockup, you can see that um, someone wrote kitsch instead of kitchen, or Kuchen in German, or Kuchen 01 or something like that. It's all the same thing, right? But so what we wanted to do is classify those, and so we use text classification, machine learning algorithm to help us with that. And it's basically like if we were over certain confidence that the classification weren't right, um, then we were assuming that is correct. Otherwise, we would prompt user to check it. Um,
Mm.
but then instead of 3,000 rooms to classify one by the user, you can have like, I don't know, maybe 100 that we are not sure about, right? And in that case, it's about rooms. So, as you can see, we are always around this topic of spaces. But I think it would be very beneficial also for assets when you have families and families are called randomly and you don't know what's that. Um, and so it would be nice to also somehow classify those, maybe based on the shape in the future. I think we are not there yet, but at one point, but I've seen this mesh anything paper some time ago that is like really good at classification set shapes. So maybe you are getting closer to this moment where you can just like, say what it is based on a shape or maybe based on a thumbnail image. Yes, but in that case, we were focused on spaces, on rooms. And here on the right one, you can see that there is kitchen in all variations, and we are comparing it essentially against a dictionary, right?
Mm,
A list of boring names. So if I go back to this slide, um, you have input that comes from Rhino, Revit, or Excel. It can be just an Excel file. And we call it dynamic room name. So dynamic room name is the weird one, right? The one that has like
mm,
is misspelled or something. Then the boring machine is doing its magic. And then on the right side, you have boring room name. So that's the room name that is selected, among, let's say, 20 different values that you have in your dictionary. And it can be beneficial for many things for analysis. So for example, we used ASHRAE energy analysis standard. So you have to label all the rooms to run a proper energy analysis properly. So we would take names of rooms and label them and classify them um, like immediately. So that's one use case. Another use case can be for benchmarking. So maybe as visible here. So for benchmarking, you know how much office space you have, how many restrooms you have, and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, and cost classification as well can be beneficial. And that's one more slide again on architecture. This one is very poor, but again, web view in the middle of everything. And you can input Excel, Revit, with the Rhino Revit connectors. And it's also running as a separate web application where you can just like drop um, your your Excel file, drop also a file with your dictionary, so the things that you want to check against, and it will classify for you. And I think this one is also open source, so it should be on IO team GitHub somewhere there.
let's go. This like genuinely like I think this is a very practical use case. I was wondering like so is it just one way autocorrection or you like for example you mislabeled a living room, it is sent to the boring machine to check, okay, living room like mislabeled is close to the living room official label, and then it prompts back. But does it go back from the web view that okay, autocorrected room name in Revit, okay, or like change it?
Yes, so we had a proof of concept for it inside Revit. So it will override your parameters. So if you have a room, override or add a new parameter. I think the parameter was called boring name, and it would just like add this label that was classified onto your room as a new parameter. Yes, so then you can use it maybe in Dynamo, or maybe you can use Aria Sync to send it somewhere and then run some business intelligence on top of that, or maybe just like visualize it on the web.
Nice. And let's say the room dictionary is in English and someone named the room in Revit in French. Uh, when it autocorrects, will it go back to Revit in English or French?
Oh, that's a good one. So it will always look for a solution in the dictionary that you provide, right? So if
Mm.
if dictionary is in French, it's gonna classify in French. um, but it works with many languages. So we had this project, we have one project in Switzerland that we are classifying, and it was smooth with actually changing it from German to English names and then classifying in English. So yeah, it would use the language that you have in your dictionary that you compare with.
Nice. And that also like made me think from coming from this project to the first Area Sync project. Uh, you are doing like project level aggregated view analysis in Area Sync. But if I want to do cross project and business intelligence analysis. And project one has living in French, and project two has living in English. How do you combine that?
That's a good one. We didn't have a case like that, but I think it would be like we can run, since we can run Boring on top of Excel. What we can do is that we can sync both models in ARIA sync. We have this concept called scenarios,
Mm,
because it's quite often the case when when you have multiple models in Revit. Maybe it's multiple buildings on one plot. Maybe it's a model of maybe you have your rooms in one model and assets in another model. So it's basically the way that basically a solution that allows you to combine multiple files together or multiple syncs together, because that happens on the web part. So I believe once those two are combined together, then you can just export Excel, put it inside your Boring machine, and classify based on the dictionary. And again, like if dictionary will be in German, the output will be in German. Yes.
interesting. What would be the next thing for this?
Actually, there is a next thing already. So Victor worked on it and made it. It's called Chateau right now. I'm not even I'm correct right now, but I think it means boring, but in Portuguese. So this is already like I think this is pretty much all of it. Like we probably don't want to add anything to it at this point. It just does its job, um, and it runs on the cloud as well. So what you see on the left is just a UI for it, but we can call it programmatically as well. So I think the next step actually would be to connect it closer with other tools such as ARIA Sync, so you can use it from level of ARIA Sync frontend, right?
Mm, interesting. And how would you do boring machine like for so was for rooms, but if there are like families being labeled incorrectly, like interior door was labeled exterior door or something, just brainstorming, how would you approach other model incorrection problems?
Yes, that's a tough one, because what we are doing here is basically we are taking names and nothing else.
Okay.
But with assets, what would be possible with families in Revit, what would be possible is probably to gather a bunch of other metadata and just like check what parameters you have attached to your doors. Maybe somewhere, maybe one parameter is saying it's external door, right?
Mm,
Then you can very confidently say that it's external door. Maybe you can analyze where instances of those doors are located. Are they between two rooms, or
mm,
are they on an external wall? If they're on the external wall, then again, we can confidently say that it's probably external doors, right? So I think we can add more and more metadata that will allow us to analyze it deeper.
yeah, yeah, I think that those kind of logics where okay, check whether both doors are connected to exterior door. But if in case both exterior wall and door are mislabeled, then it would be a rough edge case. But even like
Yeah.
door is part of common room instance. Yeah, like I don't know to what extreme we can do autocorrection if most of the properties are wrong. But
Yes, exactly, exactly. You have to trust users as well. So I believe they're gonna call it properly and add proper parameters. Sometimes it's not the case, but hopefully 90% of cases it works like that.
got it. Uh, we can move on to next or oh.
Yes, I think this is the last one. This one is a bit more crazy and it's older. So as you saw, the previous projects are very down to earth in a way. Like we are trying to solve, the real world problem and things that we can really scale and that can save a bunch of time to our users, which are who are architects. This one was more like freestyling and checking, the new cool stuffs. It was last year, and what we've done, it was like the beginning of the AI hype.
Mhm.
So you had to check this out, right? Um, but we had this little model of an office building, and then we ran. I think it was mid journey. At the moment, I would probably use some stable diffusion to do it,
Mhm.
but to generate some images. Then we had like 20 images that you can choose from, right? But it's just nice images for your facade. Like, okay, your facade can look this way, but how do we evaluate if this is great for your design or not really? What are the conditions inside? Maybe you have too much glass, you don't want that, right? So what we wanted to do is um, check those parameters, and in that case we focus on daylight and SDA, so daylight conditions inside. And here you can see on the left is the image that was picked. In the middle it's speckle viewer actually, from which we fetch the geometry. And then we pass this geometry to Rhino and Rhino Compute. And we run some segmentation on top of the image to figure out where the windows are. Um, it was pretty cumbersome at that point and didn't work exactly as we wanted, but was definitely nice to play with it. I believe that it probably we can make it way more advanced right now with all those new cool tools and models that were created recently. But on the right side, you can see the segmentation. So you can see the windows, and then we just made some rectangles out of it, and those rectangles were projected onto your facade.
Mm.
So then we were able to run some daylight analysis, right? So the third viewer that you see on the screen, the third rectangle, is the result of daylight that we ran using Ladybug, using Rhino Compute. I think, yeah, I have a, a tech stack here. So again, Vue.js, in 3JS, Speckle, Rhino Compute, getting some insights using Honeybee and Ladybug. And then there is the AI part that allows you to run some segmentation and then classifications, because we had to know what is a window, right? And unfortunately, during the hackathon, we are not able to connect all those pieces together, but it was a great time experimenting. And that's my last slide, actually.
Uh, This is like so inspiring to see the projects you've done. Like it opens up so many ideas of like the ways people are developing cutting edge stuff and experiments, and there's so much opportunities. So even like the way there's huge gap between like you see a lot of apps in the the visualization space of AI, and with this you can integrate in Grasshopper workflows or Rhino workflows and have it as part of your day-to-day operations. So, uh, great job on all the projects. Okay, we
Thank you,
have
thank
a
you.
question from Sailesh. Which model did you use for image segmentation, like architectural elements detection?
Oh, that was a long time ago already. I can't tell you now, but we use something from Hugging Face. I think it was one of Meta's models, probably.
Segment anything. Could be.
Probably,
Sam.
yes.
Yeah,
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 that's the most powerful. Yes.
I see. And uh, is taking a step back, what are some examples of automations, be it in Grasshopper or web, uh, you did till date apart from these projects?
Um, I think there were a bunch of like geometry related things. So just simplifying some shapes, maybe doing like automatic staircases in fancy shapes in Rhino. Maybe creating some facets parametrically. Um, we have this in SHLs, people that worked there before me, Jens and other guys. They used to work on something that is called snippets, and so we had like a collection of, I don't know, 100 snippets that were basically Grasshopper nodes that would solve some issues, some problems for you. And it was so cool that we have till now we have a bunch of people who are actually using it in the office just to make things faster, automate their workflows. So yeah.
Amazing. And are there any other ideas on your bucket list of automation or crazy experiments you want to do?
um, I think would be nice to play a little bit with some algorithms that came from game industry. A couple of years ago, I had a bunch of fun playing with this wave function collapse algorithm. Now we have like super cool plugin for it in Grasshopper. I don't remember how it's called, but back in the day it didn't exist, so it was a lot of fun to like sort of play with alternative ways of generating the design, very algorithmic. So yeah, I think would be nice to spend some time like going around different industries and checking what they have, because I think there is a bunch of intelligence embedded in there that we can leverage in AEC industry. So yeah, finding some time for reading some research, that'll be great.
Yeah, like I was fascinated as well when even there was that game where I think Sky Mapper, like where people were clicking and using wave function collapse. It was adding geometries. Town
So it's
scripts.
like
Yeah,
generating as you go, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. It was looked very cool.
Be like
Yeah,
chunks in Minecraft. Yeah, even in Minecraft we have some cool stuff. It's crazy.
amazing. And any new technology which is in your list to learn?
Yeah, so I think I would like to spend more time to understand backend a bit better and just like get to know it. All this concept around DevOps and Docker and Redis and how to scale up things, because we are a small team, so we kind of learn as we go. So everything started with a simple front end, then you had to add the backend layer, then now we have quite a lot of users, so you have to scale it up. And how do you do it? And how do you do it the way that it's very maintainable and easy to maintain, and you won't break everything. So those things are on the radar for sure.
I see. Yeah, I think maybe I should modify the reference I gave earlier from Grasshopper script to custom plugin, and to first version is hacky software developer where you start and second is scalable software developer where you learn all the practices and like in doing things in production ready way. Yeah.
Yes, following the roadmap.
Mhm. uh Daniel, what are some learning resources you highly recommend which were useful in your journey?
For my personal experience, we always joke that, okay, there is a new topic, we have to build something, we don't know how to do it. Okay, it's the time to buy the new Udemy course. So I have like a bunch of Udemy courses. Of course, some of them are never finished, but I think a really good learning experience is also playing around with open source libraries,
Mm,
because then you have like production or enterprise level code quite often that you can just dive in and just like see how they do it, right? So Speckle is one example. Then you have IFC.js that is really great as well. And for sure, there is a couple of other libraries in AEC industry specifically, right? Because just to like be close to what we are working on. But there is also a bunch of open source projects from big tech companies that you can just jump into and see how they do things. So I would say that, and reading documentation. It's old school, but it works very well.
That those are great advice. Any tip for people who wanna win hackathon like you?
um, just find an issue that everyone can relate to. If you have this, I think that's it, because even if you don't deliver the full product, you still had a good idea. So ideas and presentations, those are two things that win hackathons.
Uh, And like, how do you learn from other people during the hackathons and like make also a part the best experience? And
Yeah, so usually at the beginning we try to figure out who is doing what, and then you can, everyone introduce themselves, and you kind of get to know what is the skill set, and then you are trying to divide the job. So, and then I always have a lot of fun just looking at people when they work. Hopefully they are not too stressed by that, but when you like how they even code, everyone does it differently. So it's a great learning experience actually as well, just to participate in hackathons and see how other people do that.
cool. I'm gonna wrap up the interview with a rapid fire round. So you have to keep your answer super brief, 2 to 3 words, and you have 10 seconds to answer. Yeah. Uh, who's your favorite architect?
Kengo Kuma,
Your favorite architecture or urban place?
Copenhagen.
Uh, best front end library?
Ooh, Next.js.
Favorite movie?
Blow.
City you wanna travel, which is in your bucket list?
mm, Vienna.
Favorite movie? Oh,
Blow.
did I? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Favorite
Had-
book?
um, that's a good one. Let's say design patterns.
Nice. Uh, any architectural course which made a big impact?
Workshops in Italy on computational design and parametric design.
Your role model?
Um, my parents.
3 words your friends would describe you.
Chaotic, energetic, and creative.
Uh, City you wanna retire.
Probably Krakow.
Best AC event you have attended till date.
AEC Tech in New York.
I see. Is there anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you'd like to share? End on that note.
Yeah, I think we covered quite a lot. I'm super happy that I was able to share all these little hacks that we made last years. So thank you for this opportunity, and hopefully see you soon in real life.
Amazing. I look forward, and as I said earlier, it's quite inspiring to see the work you're doing, the all the at Perkinsonville as well as the hackathons, and uh, keep pushing the boundary as usual. And thanks a lot for sharing your story.